Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tafazul Hussain from Department of Political Science, Amar Singh College, and I will be I will be moderating this valedictory session of this 2 days international conference on gender sensitization, rights, policies, and issues. I welcome you all to this important session where we'll be concluding all the moderations that have happened during 2 days. So the analytical distinctions between sex and gender have been the subject of much discussion within the feminist theory and were evidently part of the deliberations of this conference as well. The concept of gender, understood as the social meanings around natural sex differences, has been the focus of an old and now rather tired debate between essentialists and anti-essentialist views in political theory and sociology. Essentialist approaches to gender consider that women are fundamentally different from men, in particularly for biological reasons, although the label of essentialism has become so unpopular today that few feminists seem comfortable with describing their own position in these terms. Anti-essentialists, often inspired by postmodern ideas, consider gender to be a social and political construction. They insist that cultural and historical variations and multidimensionality of gender identities and their imbrication with institutional relations of power. For these essentialists, the fundamental differences between men and women need to be addressed by political action. They say that state has an important role to play when it comes to the relation between the genders, which aims to reduce inequalities between the genders. For anti-essentialists, on the contrary, the social construction of gender identities itself is the part of the problem, and that should be the object of the study. I'm sure the deliberations that happened during this 2-day conference widened our understanding about gender discrimination and how, as a society, we have normalized gender disparity and its impact on the women. We had papers on various themes encompassing various aspects of gender and gender sensitization. We had themes like domestic violence, ecofeminism, intersectionality. We had papers on maternity health. We had papers on mental health, etc. That were present during the deliberations of this conference. Now, starting with the proceedings of this conference, I request Professor Vilayat Rizvi, sir, Registrar Cluster University, Srinagar, and Mushtaq Ahmed Lon Saab, Dean Academic Affairs, to come to the dais to receive our guests. I now request Professor Ajailu Numai, Professor of Sociology and Head Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusion Policy at University of Hyderabad, to come to the dais. Ma'am, please. I consider it as a great honor to now invite Professor Bulbul James Dhar to dais. She's a professor of political science at Jamia Millia Islamia and also presently the director of Sarojini Naidu Center for Women's Studies. I guess she has not joined us yet. Now I request Professor Qayyum Hussain, Vice Chancellor, Cluster University, Srinagar, to come to dais and grace us with his presence. The next distinguished guest, who is also the chief guest of this session we have with us, is Professor A. Ravindranath, Vice Chancellor, Central University of Kashmir. Sir, I request you to come to dais to grace this occasion with your presence. I now request Professor Vilayat Rizvi, Registrar, Cluster University, to honor Professor Ajailu Numai with a bouquet and a memento. Sir, please. Now I request Professor Mushtaq Ahmad Lone Sahab, Dean Academic Affairs, to honor and present the bouquet to Professor Bulbul James Darwan. Welcome. I now request Professor Qayyum Hussain, Vice Chancellor, Cluster University, Srinagar, to honor Professor A. Ravindranath, Vice Chancellor, Central University of Kashmir, with a bouquet and memento. I request all the guests to take their seats, please. Women as a group are most victimized by sexist oppression. As with other forms of group oppression, sexism is perpetuated by institutional and social structures, by the individuals who dominate, exploit, or oppress, and by the victims themselves who are socialized to behave in ways that make them act in complicity with the status quo. Male supremacist ideology encourages women to believe we are valueless and obtain value only by relating to or by bonding with men. They are taught that our relationships with each other diminish rather than enrich our experiences. They are taught that women are natural enemies, that solidarity will not exist between women because they cannot, they should not, and they will not bond with each other. We have learned, as a society, we have learned these lessons very well, and we must unlearn them if we are to build a sustained feminist movement and a gender-sensitive society. We must learn to live and work in solidarity, and we must learn to, it's particularly for the female folk, that they must learn the true meaning of the value of sisterhood. Now I welcome, I call on the dais Professor Vilayat Ali Rizvi, Registrar Cluster University, Srinagar, for the welcome address. Please, sir.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, Central University, Kashmir, Professor A. Ravindranath, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Cluster University, Srinagar, Professor Abdul Qayyum, Professor Ajay Leonimai, Professor of Sociology, Head Center of Study, Social Exclusion, Inclusive Policy, Hyderabad, India, Professor Bulbul James Dar, Professor Coordinator, MA Human Rights Program, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi, Professor Vijay Lakshmi Bara, Professor Sociology, Faculty Royal Global University, Guwahati, Professor Ruhi, she is not here, Principal of Horse College, Professor Mushtaq Ahmad Lone, Dean Academic Affairs, Professor Nazir Ahmad Simnani, Principal, GDC, Bemina, Deans of different faculties, delegates, colleagues from other colleges, researchers, and their students. Good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to this valedictory session of two-day international conference on on gender sensitization. Advances in science and technology in 50 years have brought all existing human races digitally close. and turned Earth into global home. These advances have unmasked numerous social issues in different parts of the globe, triggered emergence of many new social issues. Forced labor and migration, child labor, maternal death, access to education, access to family planning, informal employment, unpaid labor, gender pay gap, gender-based violence, transphobia, racialized gender, mental health, online radicalization, discriminatory laws, reproductive injustice, inequality, homelessness are still existing in the world. With the onset of war in Ukraine in 2022, we must record it, 6.6 million people, especially children and women, were displaced and have entered into forced labor. At present, 11 million people in India and 5.6 million people in China live as modern slaves. Thus, gender sensitization makes its relevance in transformation of societies. It aims to change the way people think about gender roles and gender equality. Gender sensitization is an important aspect of human rights and is aimed at creating awareness about gender-based discrimination and promoting gender equality. It helps in creating a safe, inclusive environment for everyone, irrespective of their gender identity. It's important to promote gender sensitization at all spheres of life, including education, workplaces, and society at large. This international conference on gender sensitization represents a part of celebration of India's 2020 presidency, G20 presidency, as a global leader under the theme, One Earth, One Family, One Future. The main objective of this conference was to bring all stakeholders on common platform to discuss, debate, and deliberate upon social issues and various dimensions of gender sensitivity and its implication for gender equality. Sir, I am sure that all aspects related to the theme have been thoroughly discussed in technical sessions, and possible solutions to societal issues have been identified and well documented so that they are published and implemented. I welcome our chief guest, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Central University Kashmir, Professor A. Ravindranath. For your information, Cluster University, although new, has deep and strong roots. It is founded by 5 colleges, established in 1905. SP College, the oldest college of J&K UT. Amar Singh College, founded in 1913. Government Women's College, started in 1950. Government Degree College, Bemina, Abdul Ahad Memorial College, now called, in 1962. And in Institute of Advanced Studies, formerly called Beard College, that started in 1937. It has strong and old roots. Most of the intellectuals of this UT have studied in these institutions. I'm pleased to inform you that 7 chief ministers of this erstwhile state and now UT are from SP College. And 5 pass outs have led leading scientific research centers, including NASA. Professor Ravinder Kumar, Chief Technologist, NASA. Krishan Kumar, Chief Technologist, NASA, sorry. It is Professor Chief. He has led NASA for so many years. He is a proud alumnus of Amar Singh College. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Cluster University, Professor Kuyum Hussain Saab, I welcome you to this valedictory function. Warm welcome to our guests from other parts of India. Professor Ajelio Numai, Professor of Sociology, Head Center of Study for Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, Hyderabad. Professor Bulbul James Dar, Professor and Coordinator MA Human Rights, Program Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi, India. I warmly welcome you to this valedictory function. I extend my warm welcome to Dean Academic Affairs, coordinators, principals of our constituent college, my brother, controller exams, and the delegates, researchers, and dear students. I warm welcome you to this valedictory session of two-day international conference. Special thanks to all members, all the members of all the committees who were associated with this conference and technical staff who worked behind the scene. Lastly, I would like to thank our collaborating partners, Mr. Feroz Ahmed, Chief Functionary of Human Welfare Voluntary Organization, and Mr. Baldev Prakash, Managing Director, JK Bank. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your insights and highlighting the purpose of this conference. And indeed, Cluster University has deep roots, as Valley's 2 oldest colleges are part of this university. With her keynote address, we have with us Professor Ajailu Numai. She will be speaking on a very important topic, and the topic will be menstrual waste and climate change, experience from the slums of Hyderabad. Ajailu Numayu is a professor of sociology and head Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy in University of Hyderabad. Her research interests include gender studies, Indian diaspora, Northeast India studies, NGOs, and their development. Please, ma'am, grace us with your speech.
Thank you so much for inviting me and dignitaries on the dais, the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Hussain Saab, and also the chief guests of the valedictory, Professor Ravindranath Ji, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Central University of Kashmir, and the Dean of Academic Affairs of Cluster University, Professor Mustaq Saab, Professor Bulbul, and of course, Professor Tafazul Hussain Saab, and others, dignitaries of the dais, and colleagues and students. I am really grateful to Cluster University, especially to Dr. Sapnam, for inviting me. I'm not new to Kashmir. I have come here last year also in the Islamic University of Science and Technology. And it is really a wonderful experience, and to address this audience, august audience in the valedictory is also an honor. Now, to begin with, my lecture is on menstruation, and I deliberately choose this because menstruation is a public health issue. And it has to be gender sensitized because the topic is always perceived as a stigma, taboo subject, stigmatized subject. And we can't ignore this subject when we're talking of gender sensitization. Menstruation ensures the existence of the future generation. Without menstruation, there is no future generation. I began my empirical fieldwork on menstruation in the two biggest slums of Hyderabad, known as Rasulpura slum and Sultan Sahi slum in the old Charminar area, those of you who are familiar with the old city of Hyderabad. 80% of my respondents are Muslim women. The remaining are other religious groups. I decided to do this because my collaborators from United States, Segal Foundation and I Foundation of America, have come forward to sponsor my research. I also began to feel very strongly that menstruation is a topic that is never discussed in the classroom. Although 30 to 40% of the audience in the classroom comprises of women, menstruating women who are in their reproductive age. There are countries now around the world which have created a policy to give leave for menstruating girls. India is far behind. We are still bogged down with issues where menstruating women are not allowed to enter religious institutions like Sabrimala temple issue because the deity is a bachelor. And it's very interesting for me when I started my work in 2016 that we have a menstruating goddess, Kamakhya, in Guwahati. I've been there twice. But menstruating women are stigmatized and excluded and ostracized within their own family and society. Another thing that I want to draw your attention is that menstruation is an important issue that affects women in every society. Now in India, according to the 2021 projected census report, there are 1,020 women per 1,000 men, out of which majority women are in their reproductive age. But women face a large number of challenges related to freedom of choice, limited access, which is to do with period poverty, not having access to sanitary pads. Now, I'm coming to the danger of sanitary pads also a little later. Lack of proper sanitation facilities. Even if toilets are constructed, there's no water. Dropout rates in India is high, mainly because of menstruation. In my study in Hyderabad slums, a huge majority of girls told me during the interview that they drop out of school because they don't have water in the toilet. And another thing is the religious and cultural practice. It's not only the Hindus, but even the Muslim women do not touch the Holy Quran, right? Do not fast during Ramadan. Do not have physical intimacy during menstruation. Now, what is important is the discourse on menstruation in the slum area is that irrespective of the geographical locations, menstrual health is an issue that affects women, albeit in different degrees. So I raised these questions on sensitization, gender sensitization, dispelling the menstrual myth, and also look at disposal of menstrual waste products during this time of sustainable development goals, leaving no one behind. We need to look at the climate change and the impact of menstrual waste products. Menstruation has been undervalued and stigmatized. Now, the policy makers and the intellectuals have ignored menstruation as a trivial issue and did not debate the menstrual waste products and their impact on climate change. I tell you, when I started this research in 2016, I conducted an international workshop in the University of Hyderabad. The banners are all up inside the campus like this. As I walk in the corridor in the School of Social Science, one of my male colleagues from another department stopped me and said, Professor Azailu, with a worried face, with a lot of stress, why are you bringing your private matter into public domain? We don't have menstruation in our curriculums. We think and believe that talking about nationalism, democracy, socialism, patriotism, these are intellectual topics, but talking about menstruation is not an intellectual topic, although it affects almost 50% of India's total population. It affects 30 to 40% of my audience in the classroom. Now, the UN Declaration Sustainable Goals emphasizes building healthy communities, clean air, natural resources, and a non-toxic environment, since nature and human beings are closely interlinked. The concern for women's menstrual health, menstrual waste, just like plastic bottles or sanitary pads and the like, as the environmental sustainability is emerging as necessary debate currently, and it has also penetrated the academic space, although there's no sufficient body of work being produced. When I started my work in 2016 and 17, there is not a scholarly work done in India on menstruation. Only few. Now, knowledge producers and those who frame curriculum for university and colleges or even in schools in India excluded this very core issue of menstruation because most of them are patriarchal and assume that such a topic is not required in the classroom discussion. And we have had enough of paper presentations where it's affirmed that culturally women's bodies are perceived as inferior to men, and they were conditioned to feel ashamed of menstruation. One of the greatest feminists of our time, Simone de Beauvoir and Gloria Steinem, argued that because women are secondary and inferior to men, women and women's bodily functions are considered negative, private, and shameful. Such opinions prevent free and open communication about women's body and their functions. Therefore, socially constructed inferior positions and negative opinions about women affects how menstruation is perceived. In fact, Simone de Beauvoir, whose famous work called The Second Sex, wrote, "Man denotes human in general, whereas women represent only the negative, and she is perceived to think with her glands. Therefore, a man is a subject, an absolute, a woman is the other, resulting in a man's superior and a woman's inferior position in the world." Gloria Steinem said, and I quote, "Whatever a superior group has will be used to justify its superiority, and whatever an inferior group has will be used to justify its plight," unquote. So for centuries, conversation about women's menstruation and reproductive organs have been considered to be women's private issues, never to open our mouth in public domain. Gloria Steinem wrote, "If men could menstruate, menstruation would become an enviable boastworthy and masculine event if men were the ones to menstruate. Sigmund Freud is also one of the classical thinker, who have worked on menstruation and theorizes menstruation, stating that, the menstrual taboo was an attempt to control women. Now, coming to the cultural practices among the Muslim women in Hyderabad slum, my study found that Muslim slum women strictly follow the religious teaching about menstruation. As I said in the beginning, they will not touch the Holy Quran, but they can recite it if they memorize it. They would not visit the mosque, nor have physical intimacy with their spouse during menstruation. The menstruating women do not fast during Ramadan, nor visit Mecca in Saudi Arabia. Their cultural and religious practices, in a way, as an outsider, I think I can say this with confidence that in a way it strengthens patriarchy. I don't know how many of you would agree with me. And it has become a part of the slum Muslim women's identity in Hyderabad. Moreover, it manifests the patriarchal ideology that discriminates against Muslim women in a setting that has tensions with modernity in a global city like Hyderabad. I also would like to bring to your attention that out of 400 sample size that I carried, when I send my research assistant who's from Nagaland, from Department of Anthropology to Charminar area, women were not able to open, they were not willing to open. So I hire another lady research scholar from Maulana Azad National Urdu University, Manu, Hyderabad. And when she went, women in this Charminar area opened up and spoke and shared their innumerable stories. Now, out of 400 women, 35% of them said that they use commercial pads. So you can just imagine, only 35 of them use commercial pads. Huge statistics, number of them use cloth pad. Let me draw your attention here that the cloth pads are hanged in the dark corner of the room, because in the morning, one of the speakers said that in the slum, Dr. Manoj also mentioned, in the slums of Hyderabad, in one room, there will be 9 to 12 members staying. And nature's call is always there, but men have to do their nature's calls first and women second. So there's a disease that emerged, urology, where women, because they wait for their turn to come, even as they walk, they would urinate without their knowledge. This is one research findings that I found. The second one is that because they cannot afford the sanitary pad, they use cloth pad. Now they live in one room, 12 members, 10 members. They hang the clothes in a dark corner of the room where there's absolutely no sunlight. So the bacteria is not killed. Because the bacteria is not killed, women's reproductive organs are infected. So much of infections going on. And when they have problems like cramp, they go for their grandmother's recipe, their mother's recipe, which again has repercussion on their health. And, I made them as if, I use this feminist research methodology. And in that, I look at these women's lived experiences and also do action research in the sense like I introduce them to NGOs to think of an alternative way, a way forward. That if you're using cloth pad, which is much better than using sanitary pads, they should hang it in the sun. The clothes should be hung in the sun, that the bacteria should be killed. And that is 100 times better than using sanitary pads. Now, coming to the waste, women use 10 to 15 pads in one cycle. But when we add it up for 12 months in a year and 40 years for 40 menstruating year, Each woman uses 7,200 pads in her lifetime. If we calculate 669 million women in India as per the projected census of India 2021 report, women use imagine the number of mountains of menstrual waste that are thrown in landfills. 6,609 million women in India. Reproductive age group women using sanitary pads land up in landfills. Professor Manoj was talking about how stinking it is to see the landfills here in Srinagar and in Chandigarh. And you can imagine that when it rains, the water, the menstrual blood water that goes into the drainage system and the rivers and the lake, that affects the ecosystem and the fish that we eat for non-vegetarians. Every commercial pad which has been manufactured, sold in the market, and used by menstruating girls and women in India is still in our environment, and they are not even in the degradation process. Therefore, it is essential to create a massive gender sensitization among menstruating girls and women and men to use non-plastic and easily compostable pads, which are low cost, affordable, and environmentally friendly. It is equally important to think of encouraging the urban slum women to be self-independent economically. A way forward, let me conclude by saying that we need to think of introducing reusable sanitary pads, and made of banana fibers. Banana fibers sanitary pads are now the in thing, which is very, very cheap and also environment friendly. Such initiative can be replicated in several states across the country. The second way forward is the cloth pad, which should be hung in a hygienically, a scientific way, using sunlight as a natural disinfectant. The third is the menstrual cup. I'm sure many of you are aware of menstrual cup by now. That is the third way forward, which is a medical device and pretty cheap. 700 rupees. If you buy from Women's Self-Help Group, you may get it for 400 to 500 rupees, and that lasts for 15 years approximately. So you save a whole lot of money, plus save the environment and bring about a climate change. You and I become agents of climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Azai. I can see the principal of Host College has joined us. Ma'am, Professor Ruhi Kant, I request you, ma'am, to come to the dais to take the seat with other guests. Please, ma'am. Dr. Manu Bhatnagar, Deputy Controller, HIV/AIDS Control Society, J&K, has also arrived, and I request ma'am to come to dais and join other guests. Dr. Manu Bhatnagar, ma'am, please. Ma'am, yes. Thank you, Professor Azai, for this wonderful insight on such an important topic. We as a society still talk about menstrual issues in hush-hush tone. We have attached so much stigma, taboo with menstruation that it has emerged as a public health issue. Imagine a natural biological process becoming a public hazard or a public health issue, as we do not want to openly talk about it. Thank you, Professor Azai, and congratulations for this wonderful study and presenting it here and educating us all about such an important issue. Thank you, ma'am, once again. I now call upon stage Professor Bulbul James Dhar. She'll be talking about right to work with dignity, and she'll be also walking us through different provisions of the POSH Act. Ma'am, please. She has been introduced. Let me introduce her again. She is a professor of political science in Jamia Millia Islamia. She has been a teacher as well. And right now she is the director of Sarojini Naidu Women's Studies Center in Jamia Millia Islamia. Ma'am, please.
So the idea was that if we are having a gender sensitization program, we can't do it without looking at sexual harassment at workplace, which is something that we need to know because we inadvertently do a lot of stuff which might work against everybody, actually. Why just women in a lot of ways? Because it impacts the service book. We need to know that. So just for that, even if we want to look at our personal interests, we need to know about it. ये कि नहीं देखना पड़ेगा. So I don't think we have much time to fail. You're giving me how much time because we have a lot of speakers here. I don't want to take that time. Yeah. So I just want to take you through instances here. And, ordinarily we take days for workshop to do something like this, but very quickly, spaces, which is something that we've been looking at here. Spaces. Now, okay, I have to put it in a better position. I have to space it in a better position. Yeah, I think it's working. Is that right? Yeah. A lot of the presentations had to do with space one way or another. Ajay actually worked about spaces which are considered private, as are women, and public spaces become male. So we really need to look at that. But feminists have looked at space in terms of freedom. And it's not just physical space, psychological, mental, to achieve certain goals, economic space, socio-cultural, all of these. And these spaces vary in organizations and institutions. We need to understand and respect them as well in a lot of ways. But we don't have time, so we won't go into statements here. We have a lot of laws in place. I don't want to go into that. Yet there was a need because of a lot of forms of violence that exist against women. So I do want to emphasize here that we're looking at times despite all these laws in place, yet the crime clock is ticking and ticking on with every, a case of IPC crime every 17 seconds, one molestation every 15 minutes, one sexual harassment every 53 minutes, cruelty by husband and relative, intimate partner violence every 9 minutes, rape case every 29 minutes, and so on. But let's not stop at data here, because this is something each of us experiences in different ways. And gender equality is not the problem. Because, the problem here is because it violates basic principles of equality, which I think all of us believe in it. It puts women at the risk of exploitation and deprivation, prevents them from participating and benefiting from developmental interventions, prevents the state from getting the benefit of their wisdom and their development and so on. So really, we need to look at how we need to change this from even more of a man's world, according to the indices that we have here. And this is something Dr. Rashmi in the morning actually drew our attention towards as well. So I'm just going to very quickly look at the Sexual Harassment Act, which before the act came into being was part of what was called the Vishaka judgment. But even before that, it was part and is still a part of Section 354 of the Indian Penal Code that deals with criminal assault of women and outraging her modesty. Section 509, which punishes individual for using words, gestures, act intending to insult the modesty of a woman. These sections left the interpretation of outraging women's modesty to the discretion of the police officers. So we needed more to look at it. It's drawn directly from CEDAW, or the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. And the guidelines that Vishaka kind of drew on were developed by the Act, even though our Constitution guarantees under Article 14 and 15, right to life, liberty, equality, 14 to 18 actually, and anything which is part of this freedom should have been there, including personal liberty, Article 21. And yet we felt the need to have this act in place to create a dignified workspace, to create a zero tolerance to harassment and sexual harassment. And very often, because I'm a part of a lot of internal complaints committees, very often I've realized the accused is not even aware they've done something because they don't know better in a lot of ways, because the girls don't speak up, the women and girls don't speak up, because we've socialized them into being, this being who will not speak up. And if she speaks up and she ignores it, and for the shame of it, quote unquote, with the result, the other person thinks, okay, she hasn't said anything. Maybe, they've actually told us we believed we were being encouraged. And this is a very worrisome thing which we need to, point towards. So what is sexual harassment? Sexual harassment is unwelcome, and the key word is unwelcome. Unwelcome sexually determined conduct, whether physical, verbal, or non-verbal. It's included all of this, but not limited to this, which is physical contact and sexual advances, demands or requests for sexual favors, making sexually colored remarks, showing pornography, sexually nuanced gestures, comments, remarks, jokes, verbal, textual, graphic, electronic, and with technology, it's only growing in different ways. So we really need to understand cybercrime, major issue that we really need to look at. I'm not going to do case studies, but the idea is consent. It can't be tu haan kar ya na kar, tu hai meri Kiran. It really needs to be beyond the psychopathic thing. Tu haan kar ya na kar, I will respect your decision, Kiran. And that respect is very significant in the identities that we are trying to create. To come back to the boring bit of the workplace as part of the act, can be any place in relation to the employee, which means any place where the aggrieved woman or defendant is employed or works. It can be the dwelling place or house of the aggrieved woman, or any place visited by the employee arising out of or during the course of employment, including transportation, provided by the employer for undertaking such journeys. So a bus, a seminar, a conference that you've gone is part of your workspace. And the definition of sexual harassment is very comprehensive. So it could be comments about your clothing, personal behavior, a person's body, remarks like that, gender-based jokes, teasing or comments. Sometimes they cost a girl. When we do adolescent boys workshops with adolescent boys, they tell us that we were only teasing and joking. And the girls tell them then that, because of your teasing, we've been taken out of schools or colleges because it's borne a brunt on us. Graphic descriptions and all of this, which we all know is something which is not consensual. So you might not be touching the person, yet blocking the person's, path to go is also harassment. There are two types of sexual harassments, basically. One is quid pro quo, which means this for that. I will do this for you, or you do this for me, and I'll do that for you, that whole notion. And second, of course, is creating a hostile environment for anybody by the remarks that you're making, making it a pleasant workspace. It's meant to be a pleasant workspace. That becomes a part of it. Non-verbal, you might not say anything, but you stare at a person, in a way which is not pleasant to the lady or the girl. Sizing up a person's body, looking up and down, derogatory gestures of a sexual nature, scratching one's groin. You don't do that when women are there. It makes them uncomfortable. Sexually suggestive looks, licking one's lips, winking, stuff like that. It forms a part of that as well. Physical, of course, is something that is graphic and but sexual harassment doesn't happen when there are other people around. So you won't have witnesses there. Visual as well, knickknacks of sexual nature, notes on email containing sexual comments. Now you have technology has brought in a whole lot of things in terms of MMSs and other things, and computer programs of sexual nature. So apart from the workspace being what we spoke about, it's also any sector, organized, unorganized, government bodies, private and public bodies, NGOs carrying commercial activity, vocational or educational kind of institutions, industrial, financial, everything. You need to have, it could be part of what is considered workplace. And an employee does not mean just a permanent employee. It's regular, temporary, ad hoc, daily wages, contract labor, co-workers, probationers, trainers, apprentice, all of which form part of the employee. Might have just come that one day. So the cluster university and the colleges within it, you really need to have an internal complaints committee, which has to be set up with interim reliefs and process for complaint and inquiry, graphically displayed to show this is what sexual harassment is, put that posters and stuff like that. And most importantly, the composition of the committee with their numbers displayed so that somebody wants to make a complaint, it can be done, discreetly as well, because, you don't like to make complaints like that. It has to be headed by a woman, 50% women members. And very often I've seen in most committees for tokenism, like other places for tokenism, you have a woman member. In this for tokenism, we have a male member. It should be more, it can be more than one male. It's important. And of course, a non-partisan third-party member, external to the organization. We won't go into the details, but basically, if it's an institution, it will be the ICC or the Internal Complaints Committee. And the composition, we've already, kind of put in. But if it's not an institution, if it's the larger body, it's what is called the LCC, which is a Local Complaints Committee. So you have a district officer and others within that purview. And this is the only legal offense that I know which has repercussions which are punishable if it is not followed in. And if you've put in a false complaint, you will be penalized for it. You don't have that in any other cases under the penal code. So it is something which is taken very seriously. And of course, the institution also needs to follow the rules of the Sexual Harassment Committee. And it's not just the person herself. It can be in case of her physical inability, incapacity. It could be her relative, friend, co-worker, NCW or SCW person, or any person who has knowledge of the incident can put in with her written consent, can put in on behalf of the complainant. And the complaint has to be carried through. There are interim reliefs that will be given to the lady for whatever it's worth, including granting of leave up to 3 months. So very often when I'm taking a session, a lot of people say, oh, women use this to get that leave and, things like that. But of course, women are also human. They misuse like others do, men as well. So maybe it's being misused, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And that doesn't mean we don't bring that into, the purview. And the kind of punishment which has been recommended is basically it affects our service book. We have to be very careful because it can affect our career completely. So disciplinary action, thank you. I really needed that. Which could be a written apology, reprimand, warning, censure, or withholding the promotion, or pay increment, or, of course, worst case scenario, termination of the employment. And that record carries wherever you are applying. It's not going to go there. Of course, the whole issue of counseling is there, which we need to look at, but there are very strict penalties. But the problem with the ICC or the lacunae or the challenges that we face as a committee is that we can only give a report. It has no teeth. Action has to be taken by the administration in some senses. And there is a confidentiality clause there, very much so. And breach of confidentiality invites a penalty of 5,000 in this case to be collected by the employer. So I just want to wind up. The modus operandi for sexual harassment at workplace, 2013, has a timeline, essentially. 3 months, invariably you can't actually come to a conclusion and give a report within 3 months because you have to have a series of witnesses. And who's a witness? Invariably, you never have a witness in the act of sexual harassment. So anybody who's seen the unease of the complainant or has witnessed or she's told her instance becomes a witness who can speak about it. So at the first level, there's conciliation. If you don't want to follow up on the case, then in case conciliation doesn't happen, the Internal Complaints Committee actually moves that forward. The allegation is either proven or not proven. Either way, that is part of the report. And if it is proven, action for misconduct is mandatory. Of course, the accused can go to a higher court for appeal or a tribunal or, in that sense of the term. And that is something which we need to, take into consideration. But as an institution, what is our obligation? We have to provide a safe working environment, display conspicuously what is sexual harassment. Also, the ICC's composition, organized like this could be considered one, organize sensitizing workshops and awareness programs, treat sexual harassment as a misconduct under the service rules and initiate action for misconduct. And also monitor timely submission of reports. So the whole idea behind this is to recognize that there's a power dynamic in the harassment which takes place, invariably senior, junior, woman, man, and in a whole lot of ways that operates within the workspace. Recognize the relationship between power, authority, and sexual harassment. And there's an institutional responsibility which the institution can't ignore and work towards it through effective, mechanisms and policies in place. And have a competent staff, have a counselor, psychologist there as well to, kind of mediate and understand the psychology, because invariably, in my experience in the ICCs I've been, they are compulsive, like repetitive abusers. So there is a psychological issue there as well that we need to, take into consideration. So let's together create a safe working environment. Thank you all. And my appreciation to the panel here. And I didn't want to take time, so I launched straight into the session.
Thank you, Professor Bulbul, for this yet another wonderful presentation, why we need dignified workspaces and for defining sexual harassment for us and the importance of consent in human relations. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again. Since Dr. Manu Bhatnagar, our guest of honor, has joined us, I request Professor Ruhi Jan Kant, principal of the host college, to present her with a token of love and appreciation. Now we'll have a detailed report about the proceedings of the conference. And for that, I call upon this Professor Mushtaq Ahmed Lone Saab, Dean Academic Affairs, Cluster University, Srinagar. Please, sir.
Chief guest, Professor Ravinder Nath, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Central University of Kashmir, Professor Qayyum Hussain, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Cluster University, Srinagar, Professor Bulbul Dar James, Professor Jamia Millia Islam, New Delhi, Professor Ajailo, Professor of Sociology, Professor Rizvi, Registrar, Cluster University, Srinagar, host principal of the college, Professor Rohi Jan Kant, our principal, Simnani Saab from Bemina College, control of examination, Professor Khurshid Ahmad Mir, deans of faculties, guests, and participants, and my dear students. I have been asked to present a detailed report of the two-day conference in which discussions and deliberations were held, and a report was penned down, which I am going to present before you. And I believe that this report will form a basis for the recommendations that would go to the government, and we hope that these recommendations would be implemented. The two-day international conference, Gender Sensitization, Rights, Policies and Issues, was organized from 5th to 6th June 2023 by Cluster University, Srinagar, at Government College for Women, which is one of the constituent colleges of Cluster University, in collaboration with Human Welfare Voluntary Organization and Jammu and Kashmir Bank. To address the issue of gender equality and gender equity, women's rights and women empowerment, which are fundamental for bringing a sustainable development. The conference was well attended by eminent academicians, policymakers, faculty members, research scholars from different parts of the country and world. The chief guest at the inaugural function was our honorable advisor to our honorable LG, Mr. Shri Raju Rai Bhatnagar. In his presidential address, the advisor listed several major initiatives taken by the central government in the past few years, and most recently through G20 India's presidency, with one of the key aims as reducing the gender gap and empowering women in all aspects of social, economic, and political life. Also, advisor highlighted that UT government of J&K has been creating a gender inclusive ecosystem so that women could have better education opportunities and contribute to economic growth. Director SKIMS, Dr. Parvez Kaul, was the guest of honor at this inaugural ceremony, who explored the role of medical science in empowerment of women. Speaking on the occasion, Vice Chancellor, Cluster University Srinagar, Professor Queen Hussain said the root cause of gender discrimination is the patriarchal mindset prevalent in our society. Though this mindset is changing with urbanization and education settle, there is long way to go for a permanent change in the scenario. Professor Ritu Garola Kumini of University of Texas, USA, delivered keynote address on theme gender diverse sensitization, dialogue and strategies. While in her special address, Professor Vijay Lakshmi Brara of Royal Global University Guwahati referred to brief history of feminism while stressing on the need to shift paradigm in the discourse of gender. In this two-day international conference, the total number of participants, speakers with 50, who had the opportunity to present their research papers during 4 technical sessions. The major themes under which the research papers were presented are: number 1, gender equality and gender equity; number 2, gender sensitization, challenges and policy options; number 3, issues and socio-psychological aspects of gender inequality; and number 4, gender and development, implementations and challenges. In the technical session 1, the keynote speaker, Professor Bulbul James Durr, talked about deconstructing gender and patriarchism vis-a-vis culture, society, differentiation between gender and sex. She sensitized everyone sitting in the auditorium by presenting apt short films and ads to show the impact of gender inequality in general. The chairperson of the session, Professor Vijay Lakshmi Brara, faculty, Royal Global University Guwahati, talked about applying anthropology to gender-based violence and redefining feminism. The session was followed with more informative and thought-provoking presentations by faculty members and scholars from various colleges, which made this session more enriching and enlightening. All the aspects were discussed through these presentations, from law to literature and masculinity to patriarchy. In technical session 2, the keynote speaker was Professor Abdul Mateen, visiting professor, Department of Sociology, Meghalaya. He delivered a noteworthy talk on the concept of intersectionality and waves of feminism. The chairperson of the session, Mr. Iqbal Loan, Commissioner for Persons with Disabilities, Social Welfare Department of J&K, said that empowerment of women in decentralized planning like panchayats is a step towards women empowerment. The speaker deliberated upon the intimate partner violence in the context of India and UT of J&K. Also, the role of shrines in meeting spiritual needs of women and the need for gender responsive planning, HIV care and gender sensitivity, climate and gender was highlighted. In technical session 3, the keynote speaker, Professor Manoj Kumar, Center for Research in Rural and Industrial Development, highlighted gender empowerment, equality, and emergence of a woman as agent of change in poverty alleviation programs. The chairperson of the session, Professor Tahmina Yusuf, Principal GDC Zakura, Srinagar, delivered on gender issues and socio-psychological aspects of gender inequality. The speaker deliberated upon social changes to education of women, gender, media, and body image, and the post-trauma cognitive beliefs and emotional intelligence among victims of domestic violence. In the technical session 4, the chairperson of the session, Dr. Rashmi Singh, Commissioner State Taxes, deliberated on that women are tool for balanced development to hasten the pace. She talked about the implementation of policies, and speakers deliberated upon challenges and issues faced by women in general, and significant themes like POSH, IPV in socially marginalized communities were also highlighted in this session. Overall, the conference aimed at providing a paramount platform for researchers, academicians, policymakers to interact and exchange their ideas. I am sure that all must have gained a lot from these deliberations. At the end, let us join hands to ensure gender equality, to facilitate the end of gender-based discrimination and vulnerabilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Mushtaq Ahmed Loan, for such a detailed review of the proceedings of this conference. And I'm sure it acted as a revision to all those who attended this session and were present during the two-day conference. I now invite Professor A. Ravindranath, Chief Guest of this session, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Central University of Kashmir, for his presidential address. Please.
So thank you and good evening. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Qayyum Saab, who has extended an invitation to be part of this particular evening event. And I also congratulate the organizers for this 2 days event, and especially the guests on the dais, Ajaylu Neumai, Bulbul Dar, Dr. Vilayat A. Rajvi, Registrar, and Mushtaq Ahmed Loan, and the principal of the college, Professor Ruhi, and Mrs. Agarwal, who shared the dais with us, and other speakers, invited speakers, the dignitaries who are on the off dais, of the dais, and the delegates, and the faculty, scholars, and students of this cluster university, Srinagar, Jammu and Kashmir. So I thank you all for being in part of this evening. But when the theme of this particular thing I thought of when it has been started on the World Environment Day, the gender sensitization, rights, policies, and issues, which is being part of the one of the Sustainable Development Goals. And most of the speakers before me and previously in these 2 days might have been deliberated much on these rights, policies, and issues. So before speaking on any other things, I would like to share my experiences. First and foremost, when we are there on the dais, there was an imbalance of gender. Only 2 women and 4 men are there. Then Qayyum Saab immediately realized, so let us invite the other women to be part to balance the situation. Because we know the gender, when we speak about the woman is always the priority. But men supposed to be responsible in respecting the woman in the society and also care in the family. So this, of course, now third dimension has come, transgender, but it is some of the things, policies, some of the countries are making. Still, it is in the formative stage. Even India also some of the aspects. But today, the main focus will be on women was there. Because I mentioned you, I would like to tell my experience as a teacher, as an administrator. So where I was made to make some informal policies because certain policies are necessary. First, my experience as a young teacher, because I was a net fellow, I was getting JRF, but to have an experience of teaching, so the part-time acceptance consent from the CSR, I joined my career as a part-time lecturer from a women's college. So it was in the chemistry lab I was handling. So suddenly one of the students, she just spilled concentrated sulfuric acid on her clothes. It was a polyester clothes. Suddenly it burnt off. So some of the students went to sodium hydroxide because always acids neutralize the bases. They thought, no, not to do that. Just spill the water on that. Otherwise, the injury will be very high. So after that, as a young, actually 24 years old, then I started looking at, is there any safety rules are available or not in the laboratory practices? There are no anything when we start the practicals commences for the particular year. So I developed a particular model curriculum like that. So actually one unit of the safety rules of laboratory, I frame because of that experience. So before commencing any laboratory experiments, so that became a mandatory in my wherever I was teaching. So first I will give the laboratory safety rules, how any kind of accidents happens. So that was my first through the women institution experience. The second, as an administrator, because I was head of department, I was also subsequently Dean Faculty of Technology, and there are a number of affiliated institutions used to have. So in that particular institution, because Ajayalu, you may mentioning about menstruation problems, because women are biologically a specificity is there, because we have 3 women's colleges associated with us, the pharmacy colleges. The teachers, the principals used to complain in the departmental committee meetings. So they are not able to cope up the attendance requirement, the 75%, though the 65% is given a relaxation of 10%. So they are not able to make what to do. So there is no any rule. The UGC mandate 75% is necessary because here the majority of the women are associated with the policy formulation. So they should be aware of it. For this particular woman I made, so informally you go like this. If there are shortage of attendance less than 65%, give an opportunity to submit an assignment for missed classes. For that, you give the attendance. So this I told. So and then subsequently in the subsequent meeting, they told us, so the improvement of the performance also increased, and also no one is being detained for the reason of shortage of attendance. So this what now such thing is necessary for all over the India, if they can bring out this as one of the issue. Another third important thing, when I was the Dean Academic at Manu on deputation, so suddenly NIRF ranking, we were not at all listed. Why we are not listed? So there I found it, there is a gender imbalance is there. Then I immediately started, let us appoint in the administrative positions. So various women. So when we created a joint dean, student welfare, and also the finance officer and joint dean in academics. So there are to balance. Initially, they were not eligible, all are associate professor cadre only. Then subsequently, a director of admissions, also a woman, we made it. So this was the things, finance officer also appointed there. And another observation I made it was only 12% enrollment was there for women at the time. So what could be the reason? What are the intervention measures we are supposed to make it? I felt it. So immediately I felt most of the women from the particular social dimensions or religious dimensions, their background, most of them are families are not affordable. So then they felt it. So probably initially I thought, let us give a 5% relaxation of, not relaxation, it is a weightage for women students. So because of that, if relaxation is there, that should made to be a rule, but weightage we can give to the woman. So based on that, I was able to improve it to another 18%, 12% to 18%. In the subsequent year, I made the another possibility. We worked out to give hostel accommodation compulsory to the women. So that has enhanced it to 24%. So finally, I thought it is not only that, let us make at least 33% to be there or 50% to reach. So that I felt, let us give first semester fee waiver, tuition fee waiver. So thereby I went to 30%, 33%. So in 3 years of my tenure, I made ensure that. So because of this, the consecutively it is enlisted in the NIRF ranking, these measures. So that's what my experience just I want, because you are already discussed almost the policy issues, rights issues, and other things. So actually, two of them are on the dais. I know them, probably they may not remember, because Bulbul, there she was the member of our advisory committee of women studies when I was Dean Development Usman University. Similarly, when I was Dean Academic, Ajay Nimoi also the member of Center for Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, and also I think Board of Studies in Women Studies. Yeah. So this, because of these people are certainly some sort of inspiration to the women, and also they have given some sort of ideas to make this kind of intervention measures for me. So these things just I would like to mention, because I was given only limited time. Thank you very much. The 10 minutes which is there, probably I might have been covered less than that. So these experiences are one of the important things. Wherever just is possible, we have to give certainly the priority, because we know the women in the society, first of all, our mother itself is our first teacher. So where we are learning, because she is also a woman. Wife, who is supposed to be our mentor, so she is also a woman. The sister, she is a guide to us for all through. Because my eldest sister, I remember very well, we are a very big family of 10. So at the time, the first one is the sister. Because of her support, my eldest brother could pursue his graduation. Because of him, he made a role model, let others to follow the same thing. She extended all support. So, though she studied only second class, but she encouraged our brothers to go for the education, in spite of my father reluctance some extent to once you completed 10th class, you should go for a search for a job, or like that to my eldest brothers, he used to say. But everyone, almost out of 10, 2 are sisters are there, 8 brothers. 4 of them completed their graduation and further higher studies. I am with the highest degree among them. Being the youngest one, I could pursue to that level, because the support of my brothers, whatever are there. So here always I remember my eldest sister. So because how she played an influential role for our education. So these are things. Here these 2 people who are associated with the Sarojini Naidu. She is the first woman to advocate for the education of a woman. So if you educate a woman, the whole family will be educated. Once whole family will be educated, the country will be empowered. So that was the statement she has made it. Even the Ajaylu Nimai, which she is associated with one of the university is associated with one of the school, Sarojini Naidu School of Fine Arts or Fine Arts is actually that residence known as Golden Threshold. It was her residence. First, she donated to for Women's College of Usman University. Subsequent Women's College, it went to University of Hyderabad. So now the another center is headed by Bulbul at Jamia Millia. So surprisingly named after Sarojini Naidu. So there is another woman influential in South India for women education, especially Durga Bai Deshmukh. So on her name, number of colleges are there. So this education of women, how it is important, you are also very much aware of it. So, and because that due recognition and a woman is empowered, then society will reach to its highest level, not only to the GDP. what country is speaking about, even we can lead rest of the world. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ravinder A. Nath, for such a wonderful anecdotal address and sharing your experiences of academic career with us all. Thank you very much, sir. We'll now have a distribution of certificates, and for that, I'd like to call Dr. Shabnam Lone, the convener of this conference, and Feroz Ahmed from Human Welfare Organization to the dais. I'd also request Professor Qayyum Hussain, Vice Chancellor, Cluster University, and Professor Ravinder A. Nath, Vice Chancellor, Central University of Kashmir, for the distribution of the certificates. Yes, other guests can join as well. Professor Vijay Lakshmi Brara, who delivered the keynote address as well as chaired the session. She's not here.
She's there very much.
And we have Professor Bulbul Dhar James, who delivered 3 lectures. So consecutive. Ma'am. Professor Manoj Kumar, who delivered a keynote address. Please come to the dais. Then we have Professor Azai, who delivered a keynote address.
She's not here. नहीं है.
Nazir Ahmad Kutte, sir, Dean Social Sciences, Cluster University, Srinagar. Please come to the dais. Huh? Then we have Shabnam Ara, Dean Students Welfare, Cluster University, and the organizer of this conference. Feroz Ahmed from Human Welfare Voluntary Organization. Tahir Masood Faruqi from Human Welfare Voluntary Organization. Is he here? Daraksha Hassan Bhatt from Human Welfare Voluntary Organization. Inayat Ahmed Qureshi from Amar Singh College, Srinagar. Professor Shamsul Haq from GDC Gandarbal. Professor Rashid Ashraf Malik from Women's College, Amirur, Srinagar. You weren't here. Dr. Samir Kaul, Government College for Women, Amirur, Srinagar. Now we'll start with the distribution of certification for the participants, those who presented papers. We'll start with Nadia Shah. Ruhi Jan, Department of Chemistry. Miss Said Shabina Yaqub. Next we have is Muhammad Salim Farooq Bhatt. Miss Insha Farooq, is she here? Insha Farooq. Shafaq Muzaffar, is she here?
No.
Miss Saima Ghazanfar. Saima Ghazanfar, she's here. Next we have Sayyid Tawsifa Rafiq. Is she here?
No.
Yukta Rai,
No. He's not.
I guess she's not here. Tabzir Yasin from Women's College. Shagufta Rashid.
No, she is not available.
Professor Khalid Wasim Hassan, I guess he's not here. Simon Nabi, is she here? No, not here. Javed Rashid is also not present. Miss Wafa Rashid. Miss Wafa. Wafa. Yeah. Next is Sabah Jan. Next we have is Mumin Jahan. Tanveer Ahmed Rathar. Tanveer. We have Huzaifa Chalku.
She is not here.
She is Huzaifa.
She is here.
Yes. Puneet Karwal. Harpreet Kaur.
She will take on behalf of her people. She will take on behalf of.
She'll be taking both the certificates, I guess.
Her people.
Misbah Feroz Kausa. Is she here? Ijaz Ahmed Loan. I guess she's not here. Shabnam Mara. Then we have Ulfat Jan. Next, we have Manisha Jakar. Is she here? Manisha Jakar. No. Absent. Manisha Jakar, she is absent. Okay. Alima Mudassir. Is she here?
Dr. Dinish Gilani from Department of Geography.
Dr. Binish Gilani from Geography Department, Amar Singh College. Is she here?
Special thanks to Vinny, she has been always supporting us.
Thank you, sirs. I request all the guests to take their seats, please. Thank you.
इसको 19 कंफर्म है क्या? प्रोग्राम से और मुझे 2 मिनट देना टाइम दे दीजिए, मैं बोलता हूँ थैंक्स करने के लिए।
बात करेंगे
तो मैं बोर्ड ऑफ थैंक्स नहीं करूँगा, मैं मेहमान आया तो फिर वो कंटिन्यूएशन एंथम कंफर्म कर दी, इसलिए मैं आपको
Honorable Vice Chancellor has requested, he personally wants to thanks all the guests and all the audience. So I request Professor Koyum Hussain sir to come and thanks the guests.
Professor Ravindranath, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Central University, Kashmir, and Chief Guest of the today's program, Professor Mustaq Ahmed Loon, Dean Academic Affairs, Cluster University, Srinagar, Professor William James Dal, Dr. Manu, Guest of Honor, Professor Ajay, Professor Ray Kant, Principal of the Sports College, Dr. Shabnam Mir, convener of this program basically, and Professor Nasir Saab, Dean of Coastal University, Srinagar, Professor Nazir Ahmed Kurte, Dean of Social Sciences, Professor Dean Education Cluster University, Srinagar, Professor Samad, Dean Humanities and Arts, Dr. Professor Dr. Vijay Lakshmi Dara, Vilayat Hussain, Star Cluster University, on evidence of this conference, members, participants, and dear students. Good afternoon. That Cluster University has its first conference on the topic of the society that is its sensitization. We are very happy because the organizers, they have really have been actually to complete this conference. And the concept of the Cluster University, the Cluster University concept, it was evolved in 2013. Under the agency program, National Infrastructure Abhiyan. The purpose of this type of the universities, because the huge population of the India is not getting the proper higher education. At that time, the government decided to build existing facilities of the colleges Plus, they can provide subject guidance for the higher and research programs so that in the short duration, the country can achieve its objective of higher education and for the students also. So by the end of the Kashmir government at that time in 2016, these two universities in this UT came into existence, and one of the cluster university Srinagar and the cluster university Jammu. But is to share the resources, existing resources of the colleges with other colleges. The faculty can also be shared, but the ego problem with the college is so much, they are not ready to share the resources and the faculty also. The government with certain objective has initiated such kind of the universities. Then who are we? Is such kind of the activities. Everybody, even they are the teacher, or they are the principals, or they are the higher education people, they should cooperate actually in the policy to boost the higher education in this country. So this is the first effort of the Cluster University. We have applied the resources of the two colleges. I have been from the conference from Amar Singh College, and many organizers from the Amar Singh College, from the other colleges. I have used the resources of the various college here. And the principal various college and Amar Singh College, both they have cooperated us in organization of this university, this conference, which is under the banner of the Cluster University Srinagar. This is the first conference in the Cluster University Srinagar. If all the cluster universities will be able to share the resources of other colleges with similar colleges, the days are not very far, and country will achieve its objective to give the higher education the development. The responsibility of every citizen not to object when we are sharing the resources of the colleges, resources of the university. And the country will manage the impacts of the education, although the government is essentially the policy that our country will the benefit of it. The mechanism form of the education basically was produced by the clerk, the present government, our this education policy, which is called as the NEP 2020, so that our people, those are not getting the government job, they can start their own business, they can enter into the entrepreneurship. So every citizen of this country has right to get the higher education, but the sources are minimum here. So in order to exploit the minimum resources for the maximum benefit, the cluster university concept is here. So this is the first effort of the cluster university, Srinagar, to share the resources of its cluster colleges, and we do not have its own campus. Once we will get our own campus, then we will try to share the resources of colleges for the benefit of the other colleges. Then we can help actually in terms of the higher education. Today, I'm going to support this conference. Some people get upset many times. So there are a lot of problems here. I'm not hesitating because I'm considered the man who is always actually putting words on my mouth. I'm actually stopping anything to say. Because it is not easy to Shabnam and the case are they both. Because this is the first practice actually in the Cluster University Srinagar. And in now, I tried to convince the Shabnam and Najit are both. Please don't be afraid. I'm actually. And many times actually, I supported, and sometimes I can say Shabnam was beaten one day actually. And she was crying Because when she said something, I said something, and so this is other the elder brothers and younger sisters, and younger brothers and elder sisters. This is nothing problem because I am running this university just like an elder brother doing. I never actually shown that I am a vice chancellor. Nobody can complain against me that I have shown my vice chancellorship in front of everybody. My objective particularly and persuade them for the country. I am for the country actually. I've business. I want to promote education actually in my country people, for my country people. My experience abroad for a long time actually. I want to impart that experience. I want to differ actually. I want to differ points. So Sagna madam and all my organizers, but Nabisa and all this conference are successful. And I'm again my guests who are sitting on the dais, my organizers, my faculty members, students, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Qayyum Hussain, sir, for your insights and highlighting the role of cluster university in higher education of the state. A formal vote of thanks will be presented by Dr. Inayat, who is the co-convener of this conference and also the Deputy DSW of the Cluster University Srinagar. Professor Inayat Qureshi, please. Vote of thanks will be followed by a national anthem, and I request the technical staff to make the arrangements for the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Tafazzul Saab. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, speakers, and delegates, a very good afternoon to one and all. It's with great pleasure, immense gratitude, and sense of fulfillment that I stand before you today to deliver the vote of thanks at the valedictory function as we conclude the remarkable two-day international conference on gender sensitization, rights, policies, and issues. This event has been a remarkable journey of enlightenment, empowerment, insightful discussions, and exchange of knowledge. It would not have been possible without the collective efforts of numerous individuals and organizations. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to each and every one of you for making this event a resounding success. First and foremost, I express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to our chief guest, Professor A. Ravindranath, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Central University of Kashmir, for accepting our invitation in this valedictory function and grace the occasion. We are highly indebted to Professor Qayyum Hussain, Honorable Vice Chancellor for Cluster University Srinagar, for support and guidance throughout the conference. Thank you, sir. We express our sincere gratitude to Dr. Manu Bhatnagar, guest of honor, for gracing the occasion despite her busy schedule. Our sincere gratitude and thanks to Dr. Mushtaq Ahmad Loan, Dean Academic Affairs, Cluster University Srinagar, for presenting an elaborate and exhaustive report of the conference proceedings. Heartfelt gratitude to all deans of all schools for constant support and guidance throughout this event. I would like to express my gratitude to our esteemed resource person, Professor Bulbul Dar James, Professor Vijay Lakshmi Dara, Professor Ajaylu Nanai, and Professor Manoj Totia, who graced this conference with their presence. Your invaluable expertise has shed light on various aspects of gender sensitization and has truly enriched our understanding. Your commitment to creating a more equitable and inclusive world is truly commendable, and we are privileged to have had the opportunity to learn from you. Our sincere thanks to Professor Vilayat Rizvi, Registrar, Cluster University, Srinagar, for welcoming address at the beginning of valedictory function. Thank you, sir. I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to all the participants and delegates who traveled far off places to be part of this conference. Your active participation, engaging discussions, and diverse perspectives has been instrumental in making this event a resounding success. The exchange of ideas and experience that took place here will undoubtedly furthering the cause of gender equality and sensitization in our societies. Our gratitude extends to the organizing committee and volunteers who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure the smooth running of the conference. Your dedication, attention to detail, and organization skills have been pivotal in making this event a memorable and impactful one. The countless hours spent in planning, coordination, and logistics have paid off, and we are truly grateful for your hard work and commitment. Thank you all. Furthermore, I would like to express our appreciation to our sponsors, Human Welfare Voluntary Organization and Jammu Kashmir Bank, whose generous support made this conference possible. Your belief in the importance of gender sensitization and your financial assistance has played a crucial role in bringing together this gathering of minds. Your commitment to social change and equality is truly inspiring, and we are honored to have you had your support. Thank you. I want to extend a special word of thanks to all the attendees who have participated in this conference. Your presence, enthusiasm, and passion for promoting gender sensitization have been the driving force behind the success of this event. Each one of you have contributed to creating the atmosphere of openness, respect, and shared learning, and for that we are enormously grateful. Your active involvement has fostered a dynamic and inclusive atmosphere, encouraging constructive dialogue and creating a platform for meaningful collaborations. We are highly indebted to Professor Ruhijan Khan of Host College for providing all the necessary support to make this event a success. Madam, without your support and guidance, it would really have been difficult to organizing this event. I extend my sincere thanks to teaching, non-teaching faculty, as well as other media persons, supporting staff who help us in from last many days in organizing this event. As we bring this conference to close, let us carry forward the knowledge, insights, and inspirations gained over past 2 days. The knowledge gained, the connections made, and the experience shared here serve as a foundation for future endeavors in promoting gender equality. Let us be agents of change in our respective fields and communities working together, gender sensitization, implementing inclusive policies, and overcoming the challenges that lie ahead. Let us carry forward the spirit of this conference and strive to create inclusive societies that respect and celebrate rights and dignity of all the individuals, regardless of their gender. Together, we can create a world where every individual, regardless of gender, can thrive and reach their full potential. Once again, thank you all for your invaluable contributions. Thank you for your unwavering support, dedication, and commitment to the cause of gender sensitization. Together, we can make real difference in this world. I wish you safe routes back to your respective destinations. Let us continue our journey towards more equitable and inclusive future. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor. And we all depart from this auditorium. I request all the audience and the guests to stand up for national anthem, please. Thank you. This is all from us. We're closing this session now.